How y'all doing? So I wanted to take a minute here and talk about something a little bit more personal than I guess what I've talked about more recently. And it may not seem like a personal topic, but trust me, for me, it's quite personal. And for those of you who've been a long-time subscribers to the channel, you probably haven't seen as many guitar videos as you were used to in the past. Certainly preceding last year, 2016, I did almost exclusively guitar videos with a couple of, skeptic videos kind of thrown in there because I really care about talking about that sort of stuff. I care about talking about philosophy and all that. But it's mostly guitar video stuff, and that's fallen off a lot, fell off a lot in 2016, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And the easy, dumb reasons you probably already guessed, which is they take a lot of time and effort. Even though I do most of them in like one take, it takes me a while to prepare what I'm going to do, what I'm going to say, and it's either prepare it ahead of time or spend a lot of time editing clips together to sort of come up with a final product that's going to be good. So that's the easy sort of semi-real answer, that it takes a lot of time to make guitar content, and that is true. But the real answer has to do with a lot deeper relationship of me and the guitar, and I wanted to talk about that because I haven't talked about it on the channel and I haven't made these things very explicit, and I think they're things that are worth knowing about just to know me better as a human being, but also to understand maybe yourself better and to be able to understand what your goals may or may not be, and what are going to be, how to pursue your goals appropriately and how to pursue your passions appropriately. So let's talk about something very important and that's very specifically related to the guitar videos not being made, and that is that I don't perform on the classical or flamenco guitar really at all anymore. I gig very, very rarely, and I almost never do it in any kind of professional sense since I left Las Vegas. And there's some really good reasons for that. It's not that I quit because I suck or something like that, though maybe I do suck, who knows. But it's really just that after about 10 years of doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to get burned down on it. So that's the main reason, is that I stopped enjoying performing on the guitar after doing it for, like I said, more than 10 years. I performed on this instrument and performed as a soloist. I performed in a lot of different capacities prior to me sort of taking up the classical guitar in a serious fashion. I performed in rock bands and I did that sort of stuff. But if you're going to do the same thing for 10 years and there's very little variety with it, it's not that big a deal if it's something that's sort of mindless, or if it's something that isn't a spiritual. You don't have to access any sort of spiritual sense of yourself in order to do it right. But when it comes to performing music, anytime you perform music, if you want to be adequate at it, you have to tap into your soul a little bit. And I know that's kind of new agey to talk about stuff like that. And I know that there's a lot of like hardline, logical type of people that watch this channel now. But that's the best way I can describe it, is that you have to put feeling into what you're doing. You have to think about the emotions you're trying to convey. And a lot of cases you have to like tap into your soul to feel those emotions so you know what you're trying to communicate. It's a much more abstract process than like painting a painting or something like that. So every day that you get up and you have to go perform on the guitar, you are displaying part of your soul and you're having to tap into part of your soul. And that can be very, very, very exhausting. It's also exhausting to do the practice, the day in, day out grind of practicing the same music over and over again for years and years so that it's good at the gig. And with classical guitar, the repertoire that's available to you is actually somewhat limited and kind of standardized. And if you're going to play flamenco, one of the things that you'll notice once you really get into it is that when most people ask for a flamenco guitarist, what they want is rumba music. They want Gypsy Kings, They don't want authentic flamenco because it's harsh. It's like what you may have heard as the intro track there, which is a tarantas. It's dissonant, it's deep, it's loud and noisy and very sort of extroverted at times, and that doesn't sit well with a lot of people when they are used to hearing guitar that's very laid back, or something that's very danceable. Now, actually, I say that something like Bulerías and Soleares, even Cigarillas, those are very danceable, but you have to actually have a deep knowledge of how those rhythms work, because they're not a standard 4/4 beat like what you have with the remote. It's not that kind of stuff. It's 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. You get a much different feel when you're playing something with that 12 beat, and most people are not familiar enough with flamenco to enjoy that or to want to really hear it. So you spend all this time like training up your flamenco skills, only to find that the market doesn't really like the flamenco skills that you've trained up, and you end up sort of playing like a lot of rumbas to satisfy people. And that's really where the grind of classical guitar really comes from, is that you're playing music, not just the same music for 10 years, because there's bands like The Who that have been playing the same music for 50 years. I don't really know how they do it, but at least it's their music and it expresses some essential part of their soul. Whereas what you end up doing as a guitarist, because you're market facing, right? You're trying to do this for a living. You're going to play the music that people want to hear from you, so you can continue to be hired and continue to make money and get tips if you're playing the restaurant or whatever you happen to be doing. That's what you're going to be doing to sort of be market facing. Is you're going to play music that people want. And that's not necessarily the music that's going to really satisfy your inner being. With classical guitar repertoire, it's the same thing. Most people play this sort of standard taraga stuff, the Villalobos. Of course, I really actually like Villalobos quite a bit. The Ginastera stuff. I'm probably going to forget at least one or two major composers if I'm just going to list them all, so I'll just stop there. But there's this sort of canon of classical guitar that if you stray too far from, the market becomes uninterested. Your crowd that comes for a classical guitar recital, your crowd that comes to see you play at some venue somewhere, or maybe at a restaurant, they are not interested in hearing like Reginald Smith Brindle, as much as I may admire his music and deeply love what he does as a creative, or what he did. He's dead now. What he did as a creative person. While I have a deep connection with that, that doesn't necessarily translate to the audience. The other thing is, you end up selecting music that's going to fit the venues that you end up playing. And I mentioned restaurants. Restaurants are where a lot of classical guitarists are going to start off making a dime, probably for no money but tips at the beginning. And you have to play music that's going to both be in the background and be audible. So you end up getting what I call restaurant chops, which is where you play everything kind of mono volume and like mono tempo, so that it kind of fits into the nice, relaxed, whatever sort of aesthetic is going on in a restaurant, rather than the boisterous flamenco music, or something that's really, really, quiet. Something that's very quiet and introspective. That's just not gonna fly in a restaurant gig. So you end up making all of those little compromises along the way. And what you sort of end up with after a long period of time is playing a set list that you're not very happy with, but you need to play that set list so that you can make money, so that you can pay the rent. And after 10 years of that, it becomes a big grind. So you just get really, really worn out playing the same music over and over again for 10 years, and it's music that you sort of will end up not that passionate about. Even music that I was passionate about when I first picked up the guitar, when I was I first picked up classical guitar when I was a teenager, like Recuerdos de la Alhambra, which I think is still a beautiful piece, but after playing it for like 15 years, you just don't really want to play it anymore. The passion for that particular piece is gone, and your passions have sort of moved on to different pastures. So that's the big reason, is that it's just really exhausting to do classical guitar professionally. And that's the most easily tangible reason for why I don't really perform anymore. There are some other reasons that I'd like to get into that I think are a little more personal. And I think a lot of people can understand burnout, right? We all get burned out from time to time with what we're doing, creatively or otherwise, and want to take a break and just try something else out, see some different scenery. Burnout in anything happens, in any profession, anywhere. Burnout's going to happen, or just the sort of getting ground down by the routine of things can definitely take its toll on people. But yeah, there's deeper things, and the first really big, really deep thing is that classical guitar is actually not something I picked up because I was specifically passionate about classical guitar relative to everything else. I've been a guitarist for 20 years or something, I don't know, long time. And in that time, I've played jazz, metal, rockabilly. I've played classical, obviously, flamenco music. I've played Spanish music. I've played Mexican music. I've played pretty much every genre of music you can imagine. I've gigged on it at some point. And the music that I was always really passionate about, especially in my late teens and early 20s, and you guys who watch the channel, you'll know that this is a passion, is I love heavy metal. I love metal music. That's been my favorite genre certainly of popular music ever. And it's the genre that continues to deliver me really good effects. It continues to affect me powerfully. And there's always new stuff coming out that's interesting to me. And there's always new things to explore. It's incredibly diverse sort of genre or style of music, as diverse as jazz. Jazz is incredibly diverse, and you can spend a lifetime digging into jazz, and you can do the same thing with metal. Metal just appeals to my personality a little bit more than jazz. I love jazz too, but I've always been interested in playing metal. So when I was 17, I really started dedicating myself in a lot bigger way to trying to achieve that vision I had in my head, that like I had this metal music in my head that I wanted to create and I wanted to perform. And so I started some bands with friends and did that, and we gigged, and in some cases we made very small amounts of money when I was young, which was just adds more fuel to that passion, that fire. But then you start to encounter some of the realities of both the youth and of trying to forge your vision with other people, which is that it became really hard to stay in a band and to keep a band together because the people involved that might be interested in your music, they are not reliable people. Like musicians in general are not the most reliable people, in case you haven't figured this out. But in some cases, like those that are particularly interested in metal can be kind of flaky, right? Some metalheads are incredibly passionate, and I've met those, and there's others that just, like, it's a hobby, or, they can never seem to make that final product happen for whatever reasons that they have going on. So after a couple years of banging your head against the wall, trying to put a group together, getting things started, playing a gig maybe, and, trying to do some recording, and then things fall apart, people quit, and you're back at square one with nobody to help you on your journey, no one to share your vision with. After you do that for like 4 or 5 years, you are going to get really burned out on that as well. And you're also going to get really jaded, and you're going to get very upset with other people. And that's basically where I was in my early 20s. I had played in all these rock bands that had never gone anywhere. I had played with so many different styles of acts that I would end up playing with an act just to have something to do, and not enjoy it and not care about the music. And that's not a great place to be in either. It's like I'm not fulfilling myself artistically. And so classical guitar, which is something that I'd played, I mentioned I played it before I played rock music, technically. So I really started on classical guitar. I decided I was going to go full bore into that. And it wasn't because I was super excited about playing classical guitar, or classical guitarists really excited me, but it was because I could do it all by myself. All by myself, right? I could show up to the gig and do it completely on my own and split the check with Uncle Sam, just pay the tax on the check. and that was really, really appealing to me when I was 21. And I can't tell you how good it felt to get paid to play music. After years of, you sort of bust your ass and you play the gig and you get the $75 and you split it 5 ways. You make $75 for an hour, or maybe it's better than that, because I definitely did better than that. But your band makes a couple of $100. You split it 5 ways, and you look at it. Maybe you have $75 at the end of the night, and you're like, well, that's great, but that doesn't take into account all the time that you spent practicing. When I started playing classical guitar and moved into gigging sort of professionally, I was able to charge $500 for a gig and split it with nobody, which was awesome, and I did that for a long time. But of course, as you get older, $500 for a gig actually starts to not be that much, because you start thinking about all the things that go into that $500 gig. Besides, you have an investment like guitars that you got to pay back. Even though you may have saved to do it, it's a sort of, I don't know, paying it forward kind of thing. You have the investment of time. So if you spend 20 hours a week practicing and you go play one gig for $500, you're not actually making $500 for 2 hours, right? You're making a lot less than that, because you essentially are having to pay yourself to practice instead of do some other kind of work. And the main thing that will get to you there is that the pay will also stagnate as well, compared to your peers. Their pay is going up, and while you might have felt quite rich at 21, when you're getting close to 30, you start to see that there's not as much future in the music as you thought. So the original idea is I wasn't specifically interested in classical guitar the way I was in metal. I didn't have this vision of myself as like Elliot Fisk or as David Russell, or even as my teacher Juan Serrano. I didn't have my vision. My vision, if I was imagining myself playing music, it wasn't in that role. It was basically playing metal. But I felt like it was so impossible for me to do metal on my own, and it was impossible for me to find other people to do it with, that I needed to check out of that and not do it. And sort of one of those unfortunate things is that you invest a lot of skills into one thing, and then later you kind of wish you'd had different skills because you get tired of the thing. But that's what it is. So the truth is that I wasn't specifically passionate about classical guitar the way some people are. That doesn't mean I was bad or that I didn't put my full effort into it. I did put my full effort into it, and I achieved. I'm not going to say I'm as good now as I used to be, because I don't practice as much as I used to. But I feel like I achieved a high level of competency on the instrument. Certainly better than average, and certainly better than your average person who does it for a living. Is how I felt about it. So that's the big one, right? Is that when you don't have an inner fire burning for the music that you're playing, and you're doing it for a long time, it's like a job, and it's like a job that asks you to be passionate. You have to conjure up passion to do it, and in order to play music for another person, you have to sort of conjure it up from the abyss, and that just becomes incredibly exhausting after a while. So when I was getting ready to leave Las Vegas, I had made a decision that I was no longer going to play music. I said, I'm giving it up. I am stepping out of the music business. The music business has been atrocious. And you also have to keep in mind the time period that I was involved in the music business, from 2001 until about 2013. And there was a lot of change that happened in those 12 years. A lot of change. We saw the death of this CD-based, we saw basically the death of record labels, in a sense, as we knew them. And the death of live music in a lot of places. Live music started to die out, and we've seen the rise of other things to replace that. But in 2001, the early 2000s, the technology to play everything completely by yourself was not all the way there, and difficult to acquire, in a sense. There weren't really a lot of things where you could totally just program drums and avoid having to have a drummer. And at a certain point in time, I was like, I can do everything. I can do everything on the record. I can produce it. The only thing I can't do is play drums. and that obviously that's changed. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. So anyway, when I was leaving Las Vegas in, I think it was 2013. 2013. I think I was leaving Las Vegas, and I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm giving it up. I'm going to go back to what I did when I was 19. When I was 19, I wrote a book because I'd also been like a big reader, and I loved stories. So I said, I'm going to write a book. Now that book when I was 19 sucked. And I don't, I've talked about this in other videos. First time you try something, you're going to suck at it. And because it sucked, I gave up on it for a while. But I came back to this. I'd written a couple screenplays in Las Vegas with my roommate. We'd been able to have some moderate success getting at least some attention for those. So that led me to think like, well, I'm going to try my hand at novel writing again. And so I wrote some books, and I wrote 2 books that will eventually come out, and I promise you on that. They need revision because they were, I hadn't developed my talent enough to really pull off the stories that I was writing with the skills that I had, but I had a lot of passion, and the first 2 books came easily. Then I had my 3rd book, this one, available at Amazon, Muramasa Blood Drinker, and I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm doing this writing thing. But during that same time, I also took a look back, and I saw however many years of effort and time and energy that had gone into creating this massive skill set called musician. And I don't just have skills on guitar, guys. Like, I have skills in a huge variety of places. I understand music theory at a very deep level. I know this sounds like boasting, but it's something that I studied really extensively and was very passionate about. It's things that I really care about. My undergraduate degree was in music composition, not in guitar, actually. And I was a composer, and I wrote a lot of music in my early 20s. And one of the reasons that I kind of trailed off from the music composition had to do with that second reason that I listed. I couldn't rely on other people to play my music. I really wanted to compose like power metal, but I just couldn't find people that wanted to do it. When I wrote classical music, the idea of getting an orchestra to just play one of your pieces is like laughable in the current state of things, because everything is, so the market of that is so twisted right now because of the way academics work, and that'll have to be a whole nother video. So I had this huge, massive, like monolithic knowledge is how I viewed it. I'm like, I spent so much effort and I spent so much time developing this knowledge and gaining this knowledge and learning how to apply it. I feel like it would be a waste for it to just disappear into nothingness while I transform myself into this other person, to this writer. And so I started making YouTube videos, and I started on my phone, a phone which I only recently just replaced because the glass started to come off of it. So I used that same phone for like 4 or 5 years or something, and it was an iPhone 5, I think, and I just started recording videos in my studio while in between guitar lessons that I was teaching. So I might have a little break where I didn't have anyone scheduled for a guitar lesson. I'd just pull up the phone and I'd start saying the stuff that I told to however many hundreds of students, thousands of students that I can't even count now, that Fresno State or at COS or wherever else I was teaching, or just teaching privately. All of these students that I had over countless years, I just started communicating that knowledge. And I kind of set a goal. I was going to do like a video every day, or every week, and I basically created this catalog of like the basics, and got a couple people's attention, and they were really interested in learning from me. And I just couldn't really keep up with the content because I had so many other things to do in my life. So making the content was slow, but I still have some of the most popular videos on YouTube, actually, on like Raschiato playing, this sort of stuff. I still have some of the most popular YouTube videos on that, and I just made that with my phone in my downtime, because it wasn't for any particular reason. I wasn't trying to make money off of it or get attention for anything else. I just wanted that knowledge to exist. And the other thing about that is that having taught at the college level, and I also teach, I'm a public educator as well. I got this real strong feeling in my heart that I wanted people to have access to free information. That I wanted at least a very low cost way for people to access the information that they want to have to progress. Like I don't want this instrument or any musical endeavor. I don't want that to be locked off from people who have a low budget. The idea that someone needs to come to me and pay me $50 an hour or $100 an hour or whatever it's going to be. I don't think I could probably get away with $100 an hour right now, but let's say $50 an hour to teach them guitar one-on-one. Now that's great, because then I can see you, I can tell you exactly like what's wrong, this and that. But there's lots of people that don't have an extra $200 a month to spend on a professional instructor to teach them how to play classical guitar or any other style of guitar. There are people that barely have enough money to buy a guitar, or they have a guitar that like their friend loaned them so that they could learn. Well, I want to provide them some information, because I would hate for the next like Yngwie Malmsteen to not exist because he didn't have money to pay for guitar lessons or something. And we live in an internet age where people can have this huge widespread access. So that was the big motivators. I felt like, especially with dealing with college education, there's a big sort of gatekeeping thing where you have to kind of put up a bunch of money to gain knowledge, and I don't really like that. I want people to be able to be as educated as they want to be if they're diligent enough to do it on their own. And if you're an avid self-learner, there's enough information out there for you to be great at guitar without a single lesson if you're dedicated, or with a very few lessons to help, just kind of put you back on the path. You could take like 4 lessons a year and look at stuff on the internet and probably get as much out or more than somebody who's actually doing a course of study at a university. And I say that without any kind of like arrogance or anything like that. That's just the truth. It wasn't like that when I was starting out, but it's like that now. And I wanted to contribute to that, and I wanted to be able to provide people with a really the correct knowledge and for free. So that was another big part of my motivator. That's why I started the guitar videos. And then, I got attention for playing guitar and a lot of demand for playing guitar, but the passion wasn't there, like I mentioned. And the passion that I had been sort of transformed over the years. And the big problem was, and this is the piece of wisdom I want to give you, and I know this video is long, and I guess I apologize for that, but it takes a while to get to know someone. When you have that vision in your mind, that artistic vision of who you are on a deep level and who you want to be on a deep level, when you start making compromises with your vision of yourself, what you're going to find is that those compromises are not going to be, in the long term, what's going to really please you. And I'm just going to be honest there, because I've made the mistake myself, and I'm in my 30s now. Am I too old? I'm too old to rock and roll, too young to die. And you make those mistakes. It's really easy to make those mistakes because you see, and this is the analogy I'll use, and you forgive me if I'm using kind of imaginative analogy. If you see the big castle, you see a castle up on a mountain, and it's a beautiful castle, and you want to go there. That's the castle that you want to go to. Just imagine a beautiful place that you want to be, and it's going to be yours if you can just make it there. But you're in the middle of an empty field, and you're all alone, right? And there's no path, so you just start walking towards the castle, and you're walking towards the castle, and eventually you see another trail that sort of goes off, and you're like, well, it's a lot easier to walk down that trail than it is to try to blaze my own trail towards that castle. But I think it's going kind of in the direction of the castle, so I'll just take it. And you take it, and you kind of see that the castle is no longer in front of you. It's kind of off to your left, and you're like, well, maybe it kind of winds around to it must wind around to the castle, but it's a lot easier than trying to blaze that trail through all those bushes and hack my way with my machete. So I'll keep at it. And after a while, you end up in a forest. You can't see the castle at all anymore, and you're like, why can't I find this castle? And maybe on the way, you're going to meet people that are like, you should really not go to that castle. That's not a good castle to go to. There's a better one down the road. That's the one you should go to. And I know I give out a lot of advice on this channel, about picking good job skills. I have, there's a deeper level. I'm not telling you to like abandon your dreams. I'm telling you to fund your dreams appropriately, right? So you take those, you listen to the people who sort of tell you the wrong things. And I had a lot of people telling me the wrong things when I was young about what I needed to do. One of those was that like I needed to have a music degree. One of those was that I needed to study this classical music. And when you go to, when you go to an art school, you're going to be asked to sort of worship in the cult of whatever music your professors happen to think is great, rather than keeping your eye on the castle that you know is where you want to go to, rather than keeping your eye on your vision. And it's not that like, I think the music that my professors think is bad, but it wasn't what I was passionate about. And so I definitely stepped off my path there, and that was not a good thing. So by the time I left Las Vegas in 2013, 12 years after really deciding I was going to do music as a profession, I was completely burned out, and I hated music. And I hated playing music, and it hurt me every time I got out my guitar and had to play for money. I felt kind of like a whore. I don't know how else to describe it. Like you just end up with these bad feelings over the years, and I just wanted out. I wanted to abandon it. And it's not that the writing, me being a writer, was not me taking like yet another easier path. It was me redirecting myself. Like, no, I'm going to do this thing that I want to do, and I'm going to blaze my own trail. I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to find a way to do it. I'm not going to let myself be turned aside. And part of that also is that, a big reason why I decided I was going to be a writer and I was going to stop this music thing, you guys know, is that I've lost a lot of hearing. And so at the same time that I made this decision, my hearing was getting worse and worse, and I was having a harder and harder time understanding what people were saying. I was having a harder and harder time hearing clearly what I could still hear clearly my guitar if I'm alone in a room, but hearing it when other things are going around, I don't really hear in stereo naturally. Maybe when I finally get my hearing aid like set up, I'll be able to mix and master stuff again. And you guys can see this, but I'm like pointing at my speakers, my monitors. I can't, I have to have friends help me mix and master recordings because I can't hear them properly. And so you just get that also grinds you down, is this continuing feeling like you're losing that sense. You're losing your ability to understand if you're good or if you sound good, right? So with progressive hearing loss, that really can it can have a really big negative emotional impact on you, and it can really, really affect your sense of self if you're a musician. Musicians that have progressive hearing loss, it is a really spiritually difficult thing to deal with. Is this feeling that you're going to be able to not hear this thing that has been your life, has been your passion, has been your means of earning your bread. I was worried about how I was going to feed myself at a certain point because I felt like my hearing was getting so bad so quickly. My tinnitus was getting so bad in my left ear that I was like, I think maybe in 10 years I may not be able to really hear well enough to do music at all. And I know 10 years seems like a long time, but I figured before then I probably would have had difficulties. I need to find something else to do. I can write books and be deaf, so I went back to that passion, which was a passion. It was one of my perhaps too many passions. Now, in the process of coming out with these books and everything, and you guys have kept up on the channel, I have the bolt in the head, and I don't know if you guys want to see it, but here we go. It's personal. It's a personal video. We're gonna see the bolt. Let's see the bolt in the head over here. Okay, there it is. So in the process of getting the bolt on the head, I basically learned that my hearing loss, I have hearing loss, but other than the tinnitus, it's not. I'm not losing it quite as bad as I thought I was. And even though I've lost a lot of hearing, I can restore the hearing in my right ear with this hearing aid, which really was a big redirection for me, and really put a lot more hope, I guess, into my heart when it came to music. I felt a lot more interested in being able to create music again. So what you may have seen on the channel, I came out with about 5 tracks at the end of last year that were all sort of in the ambient style, really in sort of a style that I wrote in 10 years ago, but the next version of that, the 30-year-old's version of that ambient music, a little more mature. And I was really, really excited to create that music. I was just, I don't know, I like refound a little bit of joy. And part of it was I wasn't doing it for my bread meal. I was doing exactly what I wanted to do in that moment to create that particular kind of music. And I wasn't caring about the market so much. I wasn't caring about that. I have other things now that put the bread on my table. I have my day job. I have my teaching job that puts the bread on my table. I don't have to worry about selling my music. So I got to just forget all the negative feelings that I had sort of bottled up with this instrument. I got to put those aside and make some new music again, which was a really unexpected thing. I never thought I would write music again. I never thought I would play music again. I never thought I'd record anything new. I never thought I'd compose any new music after I left. I made a decision I wasn't going to do it anymore because of the hearing and everything else. And I ended up coming back to it. And I think a lot of it was just the hope restored that I will be able to hear well enough that I could keep doing this longer. I mean, that I can't tell you like what that feels like. What that feels like to be going blind and then to have a doctor say, "Oh, we could fix that. Yeah, just give us a little bit, and give us a couple weeks, we'll fix it, and you'll have 20/20 vision again." Like to be going from I can't see what's in front of my face to being able to see clearly. That's the best thing. Like it's like putting on glasses. If you've never had glasses, like maybe you grew up really poor and your parents never took you to an optometrist and you're really nearsighted and you have to, you've got to read your books like this or whatever. And then you finally go to the optometrist and they put the glasses on and they flip through and all of a sudden you see the room in crystal clarity. Imagine what that kind of hope would bring to you. And that's kind of just the hope from, I don't even have the full device yet hooked up, but just the ability, when they put not the permanent device, when they put the device on my head and I can hear things. It's like, man, that's insane. I can't tell you, I can't properly communicate what a different impact that makes on your life. And basically that's the story. That's the story of me. That's why I don't perform classical guitar anymore. I don't know if I'll come back to classical guitar. If I do, it will be playing my music and the music that I actually care about because I don't want to make this my bread ticket anymore. And it's not my bread ticket, so I don't need to play any gig for extra money. That means that I can do it solely on my own terms, which I want to do. But at the same time, making those ambient tracks, I learned a lot of skills. And I also kind of had a reawakening that's like, I can do this metal thing again. So if you guys see, I'm going to complete this ambient album because I started it and I should finish what I start. But if you hear some metal stuff coming out in 2017, you'll know where it comes from. You'll know what place it's actually coming from and what I'm actually trying to hopefully achieve with that music. And I'm hoping I have lots of things in mind. I have like 12 years worth of material I could use, but I really want to do something that really represents where I'm at now, something new and interesting. So I'm really interested to maybe get back to what my original vision was, like where that castle is. The castle kind of came back into view. Like I walked out of the woods and I'm like, oh, it's still there. Maybe I can still walk to it and see what's up with this magic castle. So hopefully I'll be able to redirect that. I do have several books planned for this year as well, at least 2. Hopefully I can get them fully edited and get them done and get them looking good. I've been really sort of energized by seeing how good this book came out, and I feel like I'm in a really good place artistically for the first time. Not the first time. I felt like I've been in a really good place artistically the last couple years, but I've been in the best place artistically that I've been since I was 19, and that's a really cool feeling to feel that youthful exuberance and that youthful passion sort of come back in, and to have. Now it's on the other side where it's like I have all these ideas and I have these skills and I have the skills to do them. It's trying to find the time to do them. It's 12:21 right now where I live, and I'm finding this time to make this video at the end of a really, really hard day for me and my family. I'm not going to go into details about that, but that's part of what I wanted to make a personal video. I wanted to sort of drop those defenses and just talk about like what's real. Why have I stopped playing classical guitar. Like, what would make a person stop doing that? And there's a lot to it. Just to go over it again, it's a grind. When you do this for a living, it's a job, and that job can grind you down just like any other job. It wasn't my specific passion early on. That specific passion was metal, and this was a compromise so I could make money playing music. Even though I really started on it, it wasn't the castle. It was like, a mansion off to the side, and I wasn't really going to be satisfied with it from the get-go. But I let other people sort of lead me down that path when I shouldn't have, and that's my fault as well. So that's the sort of the deeper reason, is that the passion's really for something a little bit different than this. Although I have all these skills and I'm going to use them, so you'll get to hear some really interesting stuff if I do come up with some metal this year. I'm sure it will at least titillate a couple of people out there in the world. It'll at least titillate me, and that's all I guess that's all I really care about. But thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been informative, and maybe this will inspire you to keep your castle in sight. And that even though if you're having to blaze your own trail and the going is tough, you can find wizards on the way that can help you find a little bit better trail, but make sure you're not going off on the wrong direction, away from your goal because it's easier, or because someone else thinks it's a better goal than what you think you should have. And I know I've told people that sometimes their goals are incorrect, but in that I'm thinking of one place in particular where someone came to me with this classical guitar goal, and they weren't passionate about classical guitar. They saw it as this other path to sort of be successful in music, and you need to follow what you're really passionate at. That's what's going to bring you that psychic satisfaction. That's what's going to fulfill your heart. So I really appreciate the journey that you've all taken with me. Please let me know what you want to see in the future. I know there's so many requests, and it's really hard for me to get to them all. But I really try to make an effort. I have a backlog of videos to make, both for the guitar and for music and movie criticism in particular, and book criticism. And I would love to get all those out. It takes a while. It takes a while because I got to work on my passion, and I want you to work on your passion. And I also need to make sure my family is well taken care of and is getting all the support that they need and that they deserve as well. And I know that most of you have that limitation as well. I wish you all the luck with it. And keep that castle in mind, and blazing the trail, you're only getting closer, even if it's a hard uphill climb. At least you're getting closer to your goal. And that's a really, really good feeling. So have a great one, and I'll see you next time. Links are in the description if you want to buy this book, which I'm quite proud of. This is, to me, a big work of my heart. So I really hope you'll take the time to read it and enjoy it.